Hey folks, welcome to the last week of Accounting Principles, Part A, also known as Session 1. After Week 8, this week, we start right in on Session 2 for another 8 weeks of Accounting Principles, and we go through Chapters 3 through 6 in that second session, Session 2. In this week's devotional, I double back on the topic of spiritual leadership again and relook at the issue of others seeing God in us. I hope you check it out. This week we're in the middle of Chapter 3. We're looking at how to make the appropriate adjusting entries for 4 different types of situations. Now, before we get to that though, let's talk about that idea of deferrals and accruals for just a moment. Here's the thing. Issues arise when a specific revenue or expense apply to more than just one accounting period. Not everything is bundled up nice inside of a 30-day or 1-year time period when we're running our business. So the issue is resolved, this time boundaries, if you will, and accounting for revenues and expenses over those time boundaries. That issue is resolved by making adjusting entries at the end of the accounting period. Adjusting entries allocate to the current period the revenues and the expenses that apply to just that period so that we can get an accurate assessment of net income or our profit for that period. Remember, if we don't properly account for our revenues and expenses for the time period, say like in a given month, our net profit may be either over or understated. Without adjusting entries, the net profit for that time period just wouldn't be accurate. Okay, adjusting entries allow us to defer or push out the remaining expense or revenue to further periods. A deferral is like a postponement of the recognition of an expense that's already paid or of a revenue that we've already received in advance. Somewhat related is another type of adjusting entry called an accrual. An accrual is the recognition of an expense or revenue that has come up during the current accounting period but has not yet been recorded in the journal or the ledger at all. In other words, the accruals allow us to handle, if you will, orphan expenses and revenues that are just hanging around out there. So in summary, adjusting entries are required to handle the 4 types of situations that come up often in the accounting world. Now, these first 2 types of adjusting entries describe how to handle expenses, and then the second types that we're going to cover describe how to handle revenues. Adjusting entry type number 1 is used to defer recorded expenses, kind of like the cost of machinery or prepaid rent, and to defer those between accounting periods. By deferring, we are essentially splitting the expense into 2 different pieces. One piece we recognize in the current accounting period, and then the balance of that expense is deferred, pushed out to another accounting period. Adjusting entry type number 2 is used to recognize incurred but not recorded expenses between accounting periods. So an example would be like the accrual of wages earned by employees after the last payday in an accounting period. These next 2 adjusting entries, like I said before, tell us how to handle revenue. Adjusting entry type number 3 is used to defer recorded revenue of undelivered services or goods. And this might include like cash that we received for a service that will deliver in another accounting period. And the last adjusting entry is type 4. This type of adjusting entry recognizes unrecorded but earned revenues, such as fees that we've earned but we haven't billed or invoiced the customer for yet. This happens when we deliver a service or good in one accounting period, but we're not going to get paid for it until a future accounting period. All right, that's all I'm going to hit you with right now. Please read subsection 3-5 in your text. There are a number of key figures and examples that we're going to help you explain the adjusting entries for this week that we're talking about. Remember, I'll be available during virtual office hours on Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock Mountain Time, your time. But contact me with questions at any time. And as always, please make sure you contact me if you're struggling and you're having trouble. Okay, remember, God is on his throne. He's always been there and he's always going to be. Have a great week.